After 44 years with Weyerhaeuser Company, George will retire. We'd like to take this opportunity to take a look at his numerous accomplishments. I should let you all know that it was not easy condensing George's career into a 5-minute videotape. He has done so much for the company. Without George's natural leadership ability, Weyerhaeuser Company would not be the log by which all other forest product companies are measured. George Hunt Weyerhaeuser was born on July 8, 1926 in Seattle, Washington, to John Philip Weyerhaeuser Jr. and Helen Hunt Walker Weyerhaeuser. George's great-grandfather, Frederick Weyerhaeuser, founded Weyerhaeuser Company in 1900. With an eye for the future that exemplifies family and business traditions, Frederick said, "This is not for us, nor for our children, it is for our grandchildren." Qualities that make George a great leader and a great man were evident in high school. The 1944 Taft School Yearbook calls him a new type of man who is the perfect combination of brains, brawn, and athletic ability. It mentions his high qualities of leadership, evidenced by his election to the monitorship, calling him a prince. His ability to make people feel comfortable also was noted. The yearbook predicted that George's future life is bound to be successful, a prediction that has come true. The values he learned while growing up with his family, he uses in the business. A strong work ethic, integrity, and respect for the land. One family member recently said that George thinks from his heritage and has strong family values. Another said he doesn't separate family from business. After graduating from Taft in 1944, George joined the Navy, where it is rumored he was quite a boxer. He served for 2 years before beginning his studies at Yale in 1946. The late 40s were busy for George. In the summer of 1947, he began his career with Weyerhaeuser Company as a choker setter at the Vail McDonald Woods operations. In 1948, he and Wendy were married. They have 6 children and 12 grandchildren. And in 1949, he graduated from Yale with honors with a Bachelor of Science degree in Industrial Administration, despite wanting to transfer to Stanford Business School after 3 years. However, his father, Phil, advised him to complete his degree at Yale, putting first things first and then consider the options. People have recently described George as being a continuation of his father and being tenacious and having the ability to complete a task through to its end, lessons perhaps learned from his father. Following graduation, George began working for Weyerhaeuser Company full-time. He served in several woods and mill labor positions and became a craft mill shift superintendent at Longview, Washington. He transferred to Springfield, Oregon, where he was a kiln foreman and administrative assistant manager before being appointed the Springfield Wood Products area manager in 1954. The book, Phil Weyerhaeuser Lumberman, says his father obviously had confidence in George's ability to be successful on the Springfield responsibility, but the pressures on both of them must have been significant. George had to prove himself twice. Phil's confidence was duly rewarded. George did prove himself. In 1957, he moved to Tacoma headquarters as assistant to the Executive Vice President, Charles Ingram. He was appointed manager of Wood Products Group and elected a corporate vice president in 1958. In 1960, George was elected to the board of directors, joining other family members, F.K. Weyerhaeuser and C. Davis Weyerhaeuser, the descendants of Frederick Weyerhaeuser's original partners and friends. In 1961, he became the executive vice president for wood products, timber, and lands, and in 1964, he became executive vice president for operations. In 1962, George was elected to the board of the Boyne Company. He is pictured here with Boyne chairman Bill Allen and his wife, Meph. This relationship was important both professionally and personally. By the way, Bill Allen was elected to the Weyerhaeuser Board in 1964. In the same era, George was elected to other boards, the National Lumber Manufacturers, Business Council, and the Business Roundtable, and was able to increase his knowledge of U.S. industry. This, in turn, allowed George to broaden the scope of Weyerhaeuser Company's board to include outstanding leaders in other industries, members such as Edwin W. Rawlings, president of General Mills, Robert D. O'Brien, chairman of Pacific Car and Foundry, Chevron CEOs Otto Miller and now Bill Haynes, R.O. Anderson, Arco's chairman, Don Frisbee, Pacific Power Company's chairman, Bob Wilson, Phil Hawley, Bill Ruckelshaus, T.A. Wilson. In 1966, George became president and CEO of Weyerhaeuser Company. He was the company's 9th president and the 6th with the Weyerhaeuser name to lead the company. George was the 4th generation of Weyerhaeusers to lead the company. His father, Phil, grandfather, John, great-grandfather, Frederick, great-uncle F.E. Weyerhaeuser, and Uncle F.K. Weyerhaeuser each held the position before him. With his election, the era of expansion began, an expansion which included moving into pulp and paper, consolidating technology, developing overseas markets, and undertaking the company's first major borrowing in its history. We're aiming at becoming a totally integrated forest products company, George was quoted as saying that year. George is shown here sitting at his father's desk. Almost immediately, George launched the company's high-yield forestry program. It was based on the company's 25 years of forest research and field experience on the Clemens Tree Farm, the nation's first tree farm. The purpose of the program was to intensify management of resources, and it included planting seedlings within 1 year of harvest, fertilization techniques, and pre- and commercial thinning. It is the largest forest management program in the world. Today, using high-yield forestry techniques, Weyerhaeuser harvests more than twice the merchantable wood on each acre compared to unmanaged forests. This June, 25 years from the launching of high-yield forestry, Clemens Tree Farm celebrated its 50th anniversary. In 1968, the senior management team had a lot to smile about. Under George's leadership, annual sales reached the $1 billion mark for the first time. Weyerhaeuser International Incorporated was organized to consolidate the direction of overseas activities, and the board of directors authorized a 2-for-1 stock split. In 1969, the company announced its entry into the Mid-South region with the acquisition of Dirk's Forest Products Incorporated. Here, George and Governor Winthrop Rockefeller at Wright announced the acquisition. It was the company's largest single purchase of timberland, 1.8 million acres in Arkansas and Oklahoma. Various forest products mills and gypsum products also included in the purchase. Later that year, a $150 million expansion of Dirk's operations was announced. The expansion would include a containerboard manufacturing complex, 3 plywood plants, 2 high-speed sawmills, a particle board plant, and 3 log processing and wood chipping facilities. The program was to be completed in 1972. In the meantime, plans were being made to build a new corporate headquarters. The original location selected was in northeast Tacoma, but because there was easier access, room to expand, and greater public exposure, the site was moved to Federal Way. The decision was met with anger as headlines blazed, "Weyerhaeuser axes Tacoma." On this scaffolding that was erected for the construction, George could personally view from the 5th floor vantage point Mount Rainier in clear view. The headquarters building was designed by Skidmore, Owings, and Merrill of San Francisco. The building is designed to be part of its natural surroundings. The interior is an open landscape that was quite innovative at the time. It was economical, flexible, and allowed for ease of communication. Employees moved from the Tacoma building, which has been corporate headquarters since 1911, into the new $15 million building in April 1971. The building won the International Gold Medal Award for Architecture and several awards for its energy-efficient design, and it is still as impressive today as it was when it opened. In the summer of 1991, corporate headquarters celebrated its 20th anniversary and was renamed the George Hunt Walker Weyerhaeuser Building. In 1971, production began at Valiant, Oklahoma. The new mill was the largest facility of its type ever constructed as a unit and also was the first pulp and paper mill ever built in Oklahoma. 1973 was a landmark year for high-yield forestry when Washington Senator Henry M. Scoop Jackson scoops dirt to plant the company's 100 millionth seedling at Mima Nursery in Washington State. This same year, George announced a 3-year, $2 billion expansion plan to build new and replacement facilities. Also in 1973, sales were $2.3 billion, the first time the $2 billion mark was exceeded. Another innovation of George's was establishing health and fitness facilities in corporate area buildings. People have often been surprised that George is warm, unpretentious, and down to earth. Here he is in the Everett, Washington pulp mill, acquainting himself with an employee and the operations. In 1976, construction began on the Skidmore, Owings and Merrill Design Technology Center. It was George's idea to consolidate decentralized research efforts and bring together all scientific disciplines. This has provided an atmosphere allowing the interaction needed to enhance creativity and innovation for accelerated future programs. Construction of the 450,000 square foot building was completed in 1978. In 1973, Weyerhaeuser and Jujo Paper Company of Japan formed a joint venture company, North Pacific Paper Corporation, crowning the long business relationship that George has worked so hard to develop. This partnership resulted in the construction of the Norpac Thermomechanical Pulping and Newsprint Manufacturing Complex at Longview, Washington. George is pictured here with the president of Shimbu, who recently passed away, and the president of Jujo Paper Company at the right. Production at Norpac began in 1979. With the startup of Norpac's second machine in 1981, capacity was increased to 40,000 tons per year. A third newsprint machine is currently under construction. In the spring of 1991, Norpac's new newsprint de-inking facility was started up and production trials began. The facility will recycle 600 tons per day of old newspapers into high-quality newsprint. In February of 1979, George co-hosted a dinner for Deng Xiaoping, Vice Premier and effective leader of the People's Republic of China, in Seattle. He responded favorably to a request that Weyerhaeuser work with China's foresters in what was to become the world's largest reforestation effort. In 1984, Weyerhaeuser China Limited opened an office in Beijing, capping a 12-year trading and technology exchange between Weyerhaeuser Company and the People's Republic of China. As an internationally known and respected leader and spokesman for free trade, George served on the Trilateral Commission. The commission was established to encourage dialogue with Japanese officials and to get them to join in global solutions to economic problems. On the morning of May 18, 1980, natural disaster struck. The north face of Mount St. Helens exploded. All vegetation on more than 100 square miles of Weyerhaeuser St. Helens tree farm was killed. In areas closest to the mountain, forests of old-growth timber simply disappeared. In most of the blast zone, trees were toppled. On the fringes, they remained standing but were killed by heat. Weyerhaeuser embarked on a massive salvage effort. Planning crews followed to reforest the 47,000 acres still in Weyerhaeuser ownership. In 1986, marking the 20th anniversary of high-yield forestry, George planted the company's 2 billionth seedling on Mount St. Helens Tree Farm. In 1990, on the 10th anniversary of the explosion, Mount St. Helens was looked at as a model of regeneration. Seedlings planted in the reforestation effort stood over 25 feet tall, and an abundance of wildlife had returned to the blast zone. Weyerhaeuser Canada's Forest Regeneration Research Center was dedicated to the future generations who will benefit from the trees we plant today. At the opening ceremonies in 1981, George gets the job done by going belly to belly. He has at all times retained complete respect from his staff and from the entire business community, C.D. Weyerhaeuser said of George. This respect was exemplified when George was named chairman of the Seattle branch of the Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco. The Fed is an independent agency of the U.S. government that helps oversee the nation's banking system and sets monetary policies of the nation. In 1980, George is one of 40 businessmen in a group that Ronald Reagan formed to advise him on issues affecting the private sector of the economy. During this meeting with President Reagan and T.A. Wilson, George was able to get his message out that export means jobs. Exports helped the company through the recession of the early 1980s and kept many people employed. In 1988, then Vice President George Bush met with George at Weyerhaeuser's Technology Center. This same year, George Weyerhaeuser was elected the chairman of the board. In 1989, one of George's favorite projects, the Bonsai Garden, was dedicated. The collection symbolizes our long-term commitment as the tree-growing company and our expanding cultural and trade relationships with Pacific Rim countries, he said at the garden's opening. The Bonsai Garden, located next to the Rhododendron Species Foundation Gardens, which George also brought to headquarters, includes more than 50 prized trees, some more than 400 years old, from China, Japan, and the U.S. Jean Gardner, wife of Washington State's Governor Booth Gardner, and Richard Piacenti, executive director of the Rhododendron Species Foundation, are pictured here with George at the opening ceremony. In October 1990, the Columbus, Mississippi Bleached Kraft Pulp and Paper Complex opened, the most environmentally friendly in the nation. The $500 million complex, representing the company's largest capital investment ever, started 2 months ahead of schedule. Also in October, George was presented a resolution from the City of Columbus and Lowndes County recognizing Weyerhaeuser for continually managing its forest lands in Mississippi and Alabama with uncompromising quality, integrity, and responsible stewardship, and for enriching the quality of life for area citizens, the personal qualities and values George has used to lead Weyerhaeuser Company. On April 17, 1991, after leading the company for 25 years, George announced his retirement at the annual shareholders meeting. Attending the meeting were Marion Baldwin Ingram, whose father, Charles Ingram, was general manager when Phil Weyerhaeuser led the company, and Robert B. Wilson, former chairman of the board. After his retirement in 1991, George continues to serve as the chairman of the board. He is on the boards of Boeing, Safeco, and Chevron. He has time for some of his favorite pursuits, including becoming a board member of the Washington State Historical Society. In characteristic selfless form, George said, "When my great-grandfather founded Weyerhaeuser at the turn of the century, his goal was to utilize our forests so they would be with us forever, eternal, beautiful, abundant, productive. The people of Weyerhaeuser have made his dream a reality, and so have you, George."